was talking to one of our clients over here at Simple Growth in the lawn care and landscape maintenance industry. And his question was, Mike, how frequently should we send out our marketing documents? So at first I took the question a little out of context, and it was pretty interesting how this all broke out. So I'll lay it down for you. Originally he said, how often or how early and how frequent do you go out and market? So first I took that as a combined approach of email marketing, text messages, and direct mail, and potentially door hangers or automated mail as far as like a 9 around, where we have one home we already our client, and we go around those 9 or 12 homes around there. So my answer was that we would go out and in our previous company, go out and do 3 to 5 blasts of direct mail at 100,000 pieces a pop. And we would go out about a month and a half for the season to ramp up, and we would go all the way through to almost Memorial Day. So anywhere from about 300,000 to 400,000 EDDM direct mail pieces or postcards. And some were in windowed envelopes, some were larger print, smaller print. But the idea is we went to the same approximately 100,000 homes over 4 or 5 drops for consistency, and to drive that marketing message home. So we'd get the early adopters, people in the middle, and then by the time the late adopters to hire the lawn and landscape maintenance services there would react. So we hit that whole spectrum. So that was my first response. And he said, no, totally get that. We're going to go out, we're going to do a massive EDDM with direct mail campaign to a select amount of homes in at least 3 to 5 drops. So that was the first answer I had. But as he drove in and we started having this conversation, he said, well, really at the heart of this is that we've used a Simple Growth automation for upsell, and we've had 1 or 2 of the communications go out, and we've sold so much landscape maintenance work, as far as like mulch and early season work and spring cleanups, that we're fully booked for the next, I believe it was the next 2 months. So should we spread these out so we're not upsetting clients because it's taking so long to get to their mulching job? So this is exactly what happened at Callahan's Lawn Care. Is when we figured out automations and print marketing in that combination effect, we grew exponentially. So we would literally book our schedules within a week or 2 for the first two months, sometimes 3 months. So eventually what happened is then we realized that we could create this scarcity of urgency that wasn't perceived, but it was an actual scarcity of urgency. And we would drive back the marketing date even farther. So an example would be for snow removal. If you've seen the video where we sold $20,000 to $22,000 of snow removal on July 6th with a 90-degree day in upstate New York, this was the process because we had built such a reputation and demand for the service, and we didn't go past 600 residential plowing accounts, that we were able to start marketing and selling snow removal for residential accounts on July 6th or whatever that following Monday was after the 4th of July. And basically that ability is we front-end loaded our schedule and continued to sell till we hit capacity. So that allowed us to sell it up well in advance and be ready. So especially for like the spring, if you had a really nice start to the season like we did this year in some areas where traditionally landscape maintenance usually starts around the beginning of April in a northern market, a lot of companies were able to go out and start in the beginning of March because there wasn't any snow and the conditions permitted it. But for the companies that were proactive and started to market early between print, email, text, and phone calls, they were able to fill that workload and get an almost extra month worth of revenue in, especially before COVID hit, in there. So the long answer to that is that we need to continue to probably in the beginning start about a month and a half before the season ramps up and do that. But once we start having a database and we're nurturing and working it, we start pulling that back, that date, and we're driving and starting to add more additional bandwidth. Now, next question was, do you have the ability to add an additional crew to do some of this landscape maintenance? Because we obviously have a fixed amount of time that we can get that done. I think the gentleman is looking to add that crew very shortly if he hasn't already. But in addition, the other thing that you could potentially do is find a very qualified subcontractor and use that subcontractor to deliver that service. And then when you have a full workload and it is acceptable or in a safe place to add that crew, you don't have to take the risk. You sub it out, and then when you get the full amount, you pull it back, and then you start subbing out the next crew. So that is probably the process that was really most successful at Callahan. So we didn't incur a ton of debt, but allowed us to scale at a rapid pace. And at one point, for the last few years, we were doing 1,100 to 1,200 estimates a month in the spring. And very similar. So when you automate a business with a predictable system like we do at Simple Growth, we're seeing folks in the business. One guy, Brian Ring, we sold, I think, almost $40,000 of work on an upsell, and it hadn't even gotten to the end of the upsell. So that influx of work is not uncommon. So that is something that you want to anticipate and have some backup ability. So you don't want to oversell and upset the clients, but once you get to a point, you can create a waiting list, maybe discount it a little bit, or charge a premium to be in the front of the list, and then you can pull up that whole area. So as you're getting into maybe June or July and you're starting to go into the summer services, we should be systematically looking at the calendar. How do we start filling that slower season of July and August, at least in our market, with work that way? And then at the end of the season, we really want to double down, because that's when we recovered all our fixed overhead. So pretty much at that point, we recovered most of our overhead, and the rest is just bottom line profit outside of our labor and labor burden. So there's 3 different areas in the season we want to look at. The spring, book it in as early as you can and pre-book it. I mean, we've even gone out in November starting to pre-book work for next April. And then around Memorial Day area, we start booking our summer work. And then in the middle of the summer, we start booking our winter work. So we're constantly building that sales funnel and pre-selling that work and filling it in. And if there's an issue with capacity, we'll have an idea well before we need it, so we can proactively fill that gap. So that would be my advice to that. And then just to give you a precursor, which you're probably already kind of an inference to it, is you're going to have a labor problem, even if you're fully stacked right now on your bench of labor. Is if we are growing at this pace, the next problem is, once you've figured out your sales system and marketing, you can sell, and it's predictable, and there's stats of how many people on average from each marketing source close as a percentage, and you know the average cost per acquired client. So we can go say, okay, we're going to spend $150,000 in marketing this year, and across these different revenue or marketing avenues, you'll have an idea how much growth you're going to do statistically on average, and you can start to project your labor projections out. But before we knew those numbers at Callahan's, we ran into the same issue as this gentleman had. So we want good data in, good data out. We need to track these things. A lot of people don't think it's important, but just at its foundations, we want to be able to project what are our labor needs if we hit these percentages as we double down our marketing spend. And as you need that labor pool, we want to stack that virtual bench. So you hear myself, I talk about it a lot. Jonathan Potoshnik of the Lawn Care Millionaire definitely talks about stacking the virtual bench. We want to go out and continually recruit for every position in the business, even if we don't need it, and create a qualified labor pool. So when that surge hits, we're not hiring the first guy or the girl through the door with a pulse or half a pulse. We are hiring from a qualified labor pool that's ready to go. We have the best applicants to go out and scale that next crew. So hopefully that answers that question, kind of puts a little context to that. But you want to constantly go out, especially in the spring rush, 5 to 6 drops in the same areas, and consistently follow up for that offline marketing. So that is your hard copy direct mailing. And then you want to do your online marketing, that digital net. We want to cast that and go out with the same kind of consistency through Facebook and organic posts and paid posts. And we also want to just continue that machine so we can continue to pre-sell the work. And as we continue to build our database and nurture them, we can keep pulling that deadline back and back and back. And then we'll have a better handle of not overbooking our calendar. But hitting capacity is not a bad thing, and put them on a waiting list, or give them an incentive. If they pay more, they get in the front of the line, or maybe a small discount if they're waiting on the waiting list for 2.5 months to get some mulching done or pruning or whatever that may be. So hopefully that helps. Callahan's Corner. You ask the questions, we answer them here live on Facebook. So great conversation with that client, and I want to thank them for asking those questions, because that triggered some thoughts of some of the trenches that we've lived in my service business. And to an extent, we still do, because as we continue to grow, just like in Q1, over 400% this year and last year, these are capacity issues that we need to deal with. And how can we proactively hire and build process and systems around it to handle that influx. So great question, great conversation. Callahan's Corner. You ask the questions, we answer them live right on Facebook here.